If you scrolled through Shanann Watts' Facebook page in the summer of 2018, you would have seen exactly what she wanted you to see. A beautiful family. A loving husband. 2 little girls who called themselves Bella Boo and Cece. A sunny Colorado suburb. Pregnancy announcements. Birthday parties. Date nights. The kind of life that looked, on a phone screen, like everything was exactly right. The social media version of the Watts family was curated, warm, and completely real to the people who followed along. The version that existed behind closed doors was something else entirely. On the morning of August 13, 2018, Christopher Lee Watts strangled his pregnant wife Shanann in their bedroom while she slept. He loaded her body into the back of his truck. He put his 2 daughters, Bella, 4 years old, and Celeste, 3 years old, in the back seat, still in their pajamas, and drove 40 miles east to the oil facility where he worked. At the oil site, Shanann's daughters asked him what he was doing to their mother. He smothered Celeste first. Then Bella. He forced their small bodies through 8-inch hatches into separate crude oil storage tanks. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave in the dirt nearby. Then he drove home, showered, changed, and called his daughter's school to say they would not be attending anymore. That afternoon, he appeared on Denver television, speaking calmly into a camera, asking his family to come home. He knew exactly where they were. This is the story of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico Watts, and the man who took all 4 of them on a summer morning in Colorado. Shanann Catherine Razusek was born on January 10, 1984, in Aberdeen, North Carolina. She was described by everyone who knew her as driven, vivacious, and fiercely devoted to her family. She had battled lupus for years but refused to let it slow her down. She threw herself into everything: her work, her girls, her marriage, her social media presence. She worked as an independent promoter for a health supplement company called Louvel, selling a product called Thrive. She was good at it. Her Facebook page, packed with enthusiastic product demonstrations, family updates, and personal milestones, had built her a following of thousands of people who watched her life unfold in real time. She had met Chris Watts in 2010 through Facebook. He was also from North Carolina, from Spring Lake, not far from where she had grown up. They married in 2012 and moved to Colorado for a fresh start. Their daughter Bella Marie Watts was born on December 17, 2013. Their second daughter, Celeste Catherine Watts, was born on July 17, 2015. The girls were, by every account, inseparable. Bella's best friend and fiercest protector was her little sister, and Celeste adored her big sister in return. In 2018, Shanann discovered she was pregnant again. She was 15 weeks along by August. She and Chris had already chosen a name. They would call him Nico Lee Watts. The baby announcement video shows Chris's face when Shanann told him. He calls it awesome. He gives her a kiss. He does not look like a man who will kill his son before he takes his first breath. But that is the thing about what happened in the Watts household. Nothing looked like what it was. The summer of 2018 was when everything that had been building beneath the surface began to break. In June 2018, Shanann and the girls flew to North Carolina to spend 5 weeks with family. Chris stayed in Colorado, ostensibly to work. He told Shanann he needed to stay behind. It was not entirely a lie. He did need to stay, but not for the reasons he gave her. Chris Watts had met a co-worker named Nichol Kessinger in the spring of 2018. She was an environmental consultant at the same oil company where Chris worked as an operator. He had entered her number into his phone in June. By late June, she believed they were in a committed relationship. She thought he was separated from his wife. He was not wearing a wedding ring. He did not tell her he had 2 young children and a pregnant wife at home. While Shanann and the girls were in North Carolina, Chris and Nichol were hiking through Colorado's mountains together. He wrote her love letters. He searched Google for when to say I love you for the first time in a new relationship. By August, Nichol was looking at wedding dresses online. Meanwhile, Shanann was texting Chris from 3,000 miles away, trying to understand why he felt so distant. She confided in her close friends that she was worried about the marriage. She ordered a relationship book online called Hold Me Tight. Chris retrieved the package from the mailbox when it arrived and threw it in the garbage without opening it. When Shanann returned from North Carolina, she confronted Chris about a charge on their shared credit card, a $60 tab at a local sports bar while she had been away. She had searched the restaurant's menu online, trying to figure out if he had been with someone else. He had been. He had taken Nichol Kessinger on a date with his wife's credit card. Shanann knew something was deeply wrong. She did not know what was coming. On the evening of August 12, 2018, Shanann Watts returned home from a business trip to Arizona. Her friend and colleague Nicole Atkinson drove her. They arrived at the house at approximately 1:48 in the morning. Shanann went inside. Chris was there. The girls were asleep. According to Chris Watts's later confessions, the conversation that followed was the end of everything. He told Shanann he was having an affair and that he wanted a divorce. Shanann told him he would never see the children again. What happened next, Chris Watts has described in detail in prison interviews, detail so specific and so cold that it has haunted every investigator who heard it. He put both hands around Shanann's neck. He strangled her to death while she lay in their bed. During the attack, 4-year-old Bella walked into the room. She was carrying her blanket. She asked what was wrong with Mommy. Chris told Bella that Shanann did not feel well. He wrapped his wife's body in a bedsheet and attempted to carry her downstairs. He lost his grip on the stairs and dragged her down instead. Bella watched from above. Then he loaded Shanann's body into the back of his truck, on the floor of the back seat. He woke Celeste, still in her pajamas. He put both girls into the back seat with their mother's covered body on the floor between them. He gave Celeste her blue Yankees blanket. He gave Bella her blanket. He told investigators Celeste had brought a stuffed animal. He drove east toward the oil facility, 40 miles away. During the drive, the girls dozed on and off, leaning on each other. When Chris Watts arrived at the Anadarko petroleum oil site where he worked, he pulled over and removed Shanann's body from the truck. He laid it on the ground near where he would bury her. Bella and Celeste were awake in the back seat. They looked out and saw their father with their mother's covered body. They asked him what he was doing to Mommy. He told investigators later that he did not remember what he said to them. He smothered Celeste first. He used her blue Yankees blanket. He suffocated her in the back seat while Bella watched. Then he pushed Celeste's small body through an 8-inch hatch at the top of a crude oil storage tank. The hatch was 8 inches across. Celeste was 3 years old. She was still wearing her pajamas. He went back to Bella. Bella looked at him. She asked, "Is the same thing gonna happen to me as Cece?" Watts told investigators he was not sure if he said yes. He suffocated Bella with the same blanket. Bella, 4 years old, the little girl who woke up that morning worried about her mommy, fought back. She fought her father for her life. Her last words, as Chris Watts told investigators from his prison cell in Wisconsin, were, "Daddy, no." He pushed Bella's body through the hatch of a second, separate storage tank. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave in the dirt nearby. He did not bury Shanann with her daughters. The investigator who later described finding Shanann said she had been curled up, as if just thrown in. Discarded like trash. Then he drove home. He called his daughter's school on the way and told them the girls would no longer be attending. On the afternoon of August 13th, Shanann's friend Nicole Atkinson could not reach her. She had dropped Shanann off at home only hours earlier, but Shanann was not responding to texts. She drove to the house. She rang the doorbell. Shanann's car was in the garage. Her medication, which she needed for her lupus, was still inside. Her favorite shoes were visible through a window. Nicole called the police. When officers arrived and contacted Chris, he came home from work. A neighbor had already provided surveillance footage from a home camera on their street. The footage showed Chris backing his truck into his garage in the pre-dawn hours, unusual because he normally parked on the street. It showed him carrying bundles back and forth to the vehicle multiple times. Chris Watts told officers his family had gone to a friend's house. He could not name the friend. That evening, he appeared on Denver television. He was calm. He looked directly into the camera. He spoke about wanting his family to come home. "When I came home," he said, "nothing vanished. Nothing was here. My kids are my life." He knew exactly where his kids were. Investigators described his demeanor from the very first moments as wrong in a way that was hard to articulate but impossible to ignore. He was not asking the questions a father should ask. He was not demanding updates. He was not pacing or crying or pressing officers for information. He was cooperative in a way that felt performed rather than genuine. 2 days later, on August 15th, investigators sat Watts down for a polygraph. He failed catastrophically. His score was among the lowest the examiner had recorded. Faced with the results and with the neighbor's surveillance footage, Chris Watts asked to speak to his father privately. His father came. Chris confessed. Chris Watts's first confession was a lie wrapped in a truth. He admitted killing Shanann. He claimed he had done so after discovering her smothering their daughters, that he had acted in a fit of rage at the sight of his own children being murdered by their mother. Investigators did not believe him. The surveillance footage showed the girls alive in the truck after Shanann's body had been loaded. The timeline did not support his account. But in that first confession, he did one thing that mattered immediately. He marked up a photograph of the oil field for investigators, indicating where the bodies were. At 11 o'clock on the night of August 16th, investigators arrived at the Anadarko facility. They used an excavator to dig near the location Chris had indicated. Shanann's body was found quickly, curled in a shallow grave, wrapped in the bed sheet from their bedroom. Then they found the oil tanks. They looked at the hatches at the top, 8 inches across, and they understood what they were going to have to do. Celeste was recovered from the first tank. She was still in her pajamas. She still had her blanket with her. An investigator present that night said she has never been able to get the image out of her mind. She had just gone to bed, the investigator said through tears. Bella was recovered from the second tank. The Weld County District Attorney who prosecuted the case said, "What a horrible, horrible thought, looking at those oil tanks and seeing the size of the hatch at the top where their little bodies were shoved through. I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy." Chris Watts pleaded guilty on November 6, 2018, less than 3 months after the murders. Shanann's family had asked prosecutors not to seek the death penalty, preferring that he plead guilty and spare them a lengthy trial. He was sentenced to 5 life terms without the possibility of parole, 2 for each daughter, given their ages, and 1 for Shanann. He also received sentences for the unlawful termination of a pregnancy and for tampering with a body. For safety reasons, fan letters and threats had both reached him in Colorado. He was transferred to a maximum security prison in Wisconsin. In February 2019, investigators traveled to Wisconsin for one final interview. For 5 hours, Chris Watts told the truth for the first time, describing in full detail how he had killed his daughters, what they had said to him, what their last words were. He also revealed, in letters later obtained by media outlets, that he had planned the murders for weeks. He had tried to end Shanann's pregnancy by secretly administering OxyContin. He had attempted to smother the girls in their beds at home before deciding to take them to the oil site instead. "This was like the epitome of being angry," he said in the prison interview, before investigators and psychologists concluded that anger was not actually what had driven Chris Watts at all. What drove him was something far colder. He had built a fantasy life with his girlfriend. His family stood between him and it. So he removed his family. Nichol Kessinger had known nothing of what he planned. When she saw the news reports about the missing Watts family, and then learned she had been sleeping with the man at the center of it, she went directly to the FBI. She is now living under a different identity. The Netflix documentary American Murder, The Family Next Door, released in September 2020, constructed entirely from Shanann's own social media posts, home videos, text messages, and police body camera footage, became one of the most watched true crime documentaries in streaming history. It gave Shanann Watts the one thing the crime had tried to take from her, her own voice. Shanann Watts was 34 years old. She was 15 weeks pregnant with a son she had already named. She had spent years building a life she was proud of, sharing it with anyone who would watch, filling her social media with the evidence of a family she loved completely. Bella Watts was 4 years old. She watched her father drag her mother down the stairs and asked what was wrong with Mommy. She fought back in the back seat of her father's truck. Her last words were, "Daddy, no." Celeste Watts was 3 years old. She was still in her pajamas. She still had her blanket. Nico Watts was 15 weeks old in the womb. He never had a chance. The question that true crime analysts, psychologists, and former FBI profilers have been asking ever since is the one that has no satisfying answer. How does a man who appears to love his children, who shows up in videos bouncing them on his lap, reading them bedtime stories, calling them his life, drive them to an oil field and kill them without hesitation? The research on family annihilators suggests that the love was always conditional. That when the family became an obstacle to something Chris Watts wanted more, the love was not strong enough to override the decision. The social media posts are still out there. The videos of Shanann and the girls are still on the internet. The evidence of their lives, preserved in the platform Shanann used so joyfully, outlasted everything Chris Watts tried to do to them. He is in a maximum security prison in Wisconsin. He will die there. Subscribe to Quick Crime Vault. Every victim in this vault deserves to be remembered fully, not just as a case, but as a person. We'll see you in the next vault.